Hello everyone. I'm going to be putting together a card that by now is actually already put together. It was for a buddy of mine, for I believe his girlfriend or wife or whatever. So what you'll see on the left is a stack of 6 borders already glued together, the card already cut, the patch, and that's the bottom card that you see me holding right there. That is regular adhesive vinyl. I like the adhesive because you can just peel the backing and stick it to the card, or actually stick the card to it. You can also use the heat transfer vinyl. You just got to put glue on the card, push it down. I usually put something heavy on it, let it sit for about 5 minutes, and then just cut it like you'll see here. So when doing this, I prefer to put the vinyl tape side up, and then put the card down so you get less bubbles. I still get bubbles sometimes. I just find this to be easier. If someone knows of a better way, feel free to comment or correct me, but that's just the way that I like to do it. So, and then I kind of just cut the way I would normally cut. I cut slow because I have oddly large meat hooks and then small little blades. But the last thing you want to do is leave like 1/8 of an inch of vinyl right around the frame, because then you gotta, after you trim all that, you gotta go back and try to trim it closer to the card, because you can't be any larger than the card, otherwise it doesn't fit in the cases, or at least the ones that I put them in. So I take my time doing this. You don't want to cut the card either, because then depending on what style of card you're making, it's going to be very visible, and it's this is why it's kind of a labor of love. It takes about 3-4 hours to make any card, almost no matter how you make it. So you want to take your time doing that. So like I said in other videos, the vinyl that I get on Amazon is it's not that expensive, and there's endless opportunities or choices for patterns, colors, all that kind of stuff. There are times I'll use a solid color, like on this, I use the solid silver or hollow or whatever terminology you want to use for it, I guess. And then when I flip it over, I'm going to use a clear holographic, I guess it's film or overlay or laminate, even though we're not laminating anything, and it's got some sort of pattern on it that gives it an additional effect. When these things have light that shine on them, they really look cool. So when you're either walking by it, or if you're holding it and you move it, or you go to show somebody, like as you look, you're like, oh, what the hell is that? And that is the kind of effect that you're trying to give. You don't want it to be a regular sports card or picture, because that's kind of like, at least the way I look at it, that's what you're doing. You're giving it an additional optic view, so that way it looks neat. Otherwise it would just be basic stuff that you could buy in a store, and then what the hell's the point? So, almost done here. I strongly recommend some sort of light source, like you see the headlamp there. I'm actually wearing it. It's not just for fun. It really helps. Mine's rechargeable like a cell phone battery, so it makes my life 1,000 times easier with all this stuff. All right. Some of them have the film on them. You got to take that off. If you forget to, you will be sorry, because as you glue things on and you put them on, the issue is going to be that you can just rip it off, and then your card is completely screwed. So you'll see a couple of small bubbles there. I was not worried about that with this, because I'm going to put that holographic overlay on top of it, and then obviously the borders, and then obviously the patch. So 80% to 90% of that is going to get covered up anyway. So I'm not going to rip it apart and redo it again. A lot of the times you can't even pull that stuff back off the card. It's obviously just cardboard. So when you go to pull it back off, you're just going to create a mess. You're going to have to get another piece of vinyl or whatever. People use construction paper, glitter paper, foil paper. Well, I have all that stuff too, and I do use it for some stuff. It is very fun and easy to work with. So you get to truly like scrapbook or arts and crafts when doing this stuff. There's no real rules. It's whatever you want to do. That's me piercing the vinyl and the overlay to get some of the air out. I should have pierced it before I put the overlay on it, because then it looks a little bit less obvious. I didn't worry about it though, because obviously I was gonna be covering 90% of it. When you cut the overlay, you want to flip the card back over onto its face. You don't want to push down past the card. It does not cut clean like that. Even with a fresh blade, it becomes a real pain in the butt. So technique matters a lot. The right tools matter a lot. I got a buddy of mine I've been helping. He really got into this. He enjoys it very much. He's doing a lot of things that I did when I first started, a lot of mistakes, and I was lucky to have a bunch of guys give me some advice along the way. I would send them pictures, videos of what I was doing. I would ask them for advice, and they truly helped me. The little things that they told me, the little things they helped me with, actually, like, I saw a difference in what it was that I was doing. That's one of the reasons why I decided to do these videos. Eventually, I'd like to do other videos that aren't just so mundane about making cards. People who make this stuff already are going to be like, oh, that was awesome, and like they're going to give you the stale fart face, like, cool, just trying to be positive. The reality of it is this is about some of the driest content on the face of the planet. But if you are truly trying to get into this, you do need this stuff. You do need to know what other people do, and this is just the way I do it for the style of cards that I make. So understand that there are, I was just watching a live stream on Instagram of another guy who does this, and he does stuff differently than I do. And then there was other people in the room that do stuff with painting and stuff with drawing that's about 47 levels above what it is that I do. I consider those people true artists. I'm cutting and pasting. Yeah, you have to have an imagination. You got to be kind of good at what you're doing and make it look good in the end. But I view art, like true artists, as people that can do that kind of stuff. So that's what the card will look like with the vinyl and the holographic effect on it. Pretty straightforward. I look at it before solidifying everything to the card at every phase. I do that very much on purpose. I want to make sure that, you know, what I have in my head is going to translate. I could stop at any point in time. I could literally stop right now, grab a different base card. Lord knows I have 47,000. And just put another piece of vinyl on it and be like, oh, that was a shit color. I don't want to do that color. I want to do something else. I don't like the way it looks when it's all put together. Sometimes this is very much a sum of its parts can look better than the individual pieces kind of mentality, and sometimes the individual pieces look better than the sum of its parts. So you wanna just kind of like fact check your own work the entire way as you're doing it. It doesn't take very long to do that. I don't know if I did it in this video or not, but I'll even take the case, the 180 point magnetic case that I use to put these cards in. I don't need them to hold the cards together, by the way. They are totally made to be taken out, but I just like the way that they look when they're done. But you want to check what it's going to look like in the case. Obviously, you want to make sure that it fits. You want to, like, optically for yourself, or if you're making this for somebody as a gift, or if you sold one to somebody or whatever, you want to make sure that, like, at the end of the day, they don't care what you did to make this. They're going to care that it looks good. Like, oh, that looks cool. So that's a box full of cards that I usually keep in my little ShopRite bag there. So that's it weighs a fair amount. So I put that on there for about 5 or 6 minutes and then let it just kind of compress down. One of the guys that I sold a card to out in Seattle, he messaged me afterwards, and he really liked the card. But his word of advice was, hey, I started to see some separation on the side. He's like, you may want to make sure you put some sort of pressure down as you're letting the glue dry or whatever. And he was 100% right. I knew it already, and I should have done it. So I would definitely make sure you use a lot of pressure when you're doing that. So with patches that are larger than the shadow box, I measure one side. I use a straight edge. I use a pen, kind of like I have a little bit of Down syndrome there, but you get the point. Want to cut along that line as straight as I can. I don't do both sides because, as you're going to see here in a minute, if you do one side and then you kind of like measure twice, cut once kind of mentality, you give yourself an opportunity to make up for any mistakes. And once a patch is cut, obviously, it's usually hard to reuse that patch somewhere else. So if you screw it up, it's a waste of money, it's a waste of time, it's a waste of resources. So I have found that if I cut one side on the cards that have the shadow boxes, because I make cards that don't have shadow boxes, you have a little bit of forgiveness if you do it that way. So I cut the end straight. Like I said in the previous video about having straight scissors, definitely very important. You also want to have a good enough hand to not cut it on an angle. As you see it here, I measured, but I cut too far to the one side, and I started to realize, like, oh, I actually don't need to cut the other side, and if I do, it's going to look bad. So it was just basically the perfect size. The patch was a little bit more off center than I want to be, but the whole Mets logo is still there. There's no issues. As you'll see here, I put the card back on top. Again, just looking, okay, is that what it looked like? Is that what I wanted it to do? So Just like also in the other video, I had said make sure I personally put the tape on the patch. I like the double-sided tape. I don't mind putting it over either side, and then I just fold it back. You don't want to leave the tape like you want it to be all hidden by the patch. So make sure you fold up whatever excess is behind the patch. So what I'll do here is I'll end up fold all that stuff back, and then I'm going to put the patch down, but I'm not going to push it down, because once I do that, it becomes a pain in the butt to try to pull it back up. You can leave a residue on the vinyl. You might pull it up. You'll give yourself air bubbles. You're just making a mess at that point. So you want to be very careful with how you do that kind of stuff. So I'm going to put it where I think it should go. Then I'm going to put the top card back on it for placement, because you don't want it to be too high, too low. See how that's a little bit high, the patch? Come down just a little bit. You know, you get it to where you want it, and then you're gonna want to push it down. For double-sided tape, that stuff works really, really good. I've touched base with some people that I've sold or given cards to in the very beginning, just to see if they were holding up, and they are, which is, you know, good news. The Gorilla Glue, or the Crazy Glue that I was using, I didn't like it because not only would it have like a white crusty film sometimes, but it would also bleed through the patches every once in a while. So I'm very glad that I switched over to the double-sided tape. So back of the card, before I put the front of the card on, if I remember, that's when I put my backing on. I glue it, because if you pull back that sticker paper, if you pull that back, once that's on, that's on. So if it's on crooked, or I just messed up the way I put it on, period, like, you're screwed. So I did that a couple of times and went, there's got to be a better way. So I glue it that way. I put it down, and then I cut it just like I would cut anything else with the X-Acto knife. Without having the front card on, it's a lot easier. I can just push my fingers down on the patch to hold the card steady so it doesn't move. The other problem with that sticker paper is that if I glide it across my cutting board, which is very coarse at this point because I've been using the hell out of it, it will scratch the ink on the sticker paper. I don't know if it's because of the type of printer I'm using or the type of paper I'm using, but I don't want to scratch up the back or make it look like crap, like, too much. So I just had somebody that wanted to buy a whole bunch of these for me on Facebook Marketplace, and they messaged me and they're like, oh, can I see the back? And I'm like, it's a custom card, it's not a regular card. And they're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, because once they said they wanted to see the back, I knew that they thought that these were real cards. And I said, they're made from real cards, but they're custom cards. I said, they don't make cards like this. And he's like, what are you talking about? So I sent him pictures of the backs, and I said, so you don't ever want to deceive people. I like that they look like regular cards. That means that their quality is enough that they're like, oh, they look very nice. But by the same token too, we're not in the business of trying to trick people about what they're getting. This is a picture made from cards. It's a piece of art. It's something that you want to display. It's something that the person that owns it is proud enough to see, and hopefully they like what they have, and it's something that could sit on their desk or their wall, and that's the end of that. That's why I personally don't charge a whole hell of a lot of money, because they are what they are in the wheelhouse that they are in, and I enjoy doing it. I try to keep more of them than sell more of them anymore, because I like them, even though my wife won't let me put them, in the living room. Those are the cases that I use. I get them off of Amazon. I use BCW. I don't know if there's any other good kinds or not. I don't speak negatively of them. I like the ones that I have, and they're within a price point that I'm comfortable with, so that's kind of why I use them. So just doing again what I had said before about just really making sure that they fit, making sure they're not too thick, which has happened before, especially if I make an image where, let's say I had cut David Wright out and I moved him one way or the other, or I put him on front of the card or behind the card to give it like a 3D effect, and I accidentally added a layer that I didn't plan on adding, then all of my math goes off. But then also too, I can't close the magnetic case, and then that becomes a problem, because people like them in the magnetic case because it allows for cleaner display. It looks nicer. I date and sign all my cards. Sometimes if I know somebody, I'll put some sort of wise guy message at the top or something like that. Like I've done ones for Dan the Card Man, a YouTuber. I've done ones for Run Good Life, a YouTuber and card breaker, the Sports Card Dad. I've put little messages at the top of them. These guys aren't reselling these cards. They're not doing anything. They're for them. They were players that they specifically liked or wanted. I made them just because I like them. Grip and Rip Sports, another guy that I've made a couple of cards for. He loves the ones that I've made. I actually made him one as like a surprise, like a second one. So I appreciated the fact that he liked them, or at least the ones that I made. So other than that, I just kind of keep it simple on the back, but I want it to be something that is not the original backing, because I don't want anybody to ever get confused that's like a special card or something like that. It's not. It's a special card that I made, so that way nobody can ever try to resell it or dupe somebody else. I don't like that idea. Same principle again. Okay, it's on there. It looks good. Great, wonderful. A little bit more pressure, another 5 or 6 minutes. With the chrome cards, sometimes, and I didn't need to on this time, but sometimes I have a bunch of microfiber cloths. I will just wipe them down, just like you would before you would send a card out for grading, just to make them clean, just so they look nice, that's all, nothing else. So I'll probably make like a Kurt's Card Care spoof video one time. I don't hate that stuff, but I also understand why people think it's crap, so I want to try to poke fun at it a little bit. So, and that's the finished product. That's just putting it together. It takes a little while to cut the card, cut the borders, glue it all together, but that's the finished product. That's the principle I use for almost every card that I make, whether I have a border, I don't have a border, whether it's a 180 point card, a 360 point card. The principles all remain the same. So I'll put that back in the bag that they came in, and that's the end of it. All right, thanks for watching. Have a good one.